It's time to bring on the blooms at the Home Depot with spring garden deals. Find savings on hanging baskets and flowers to brighten your backyard or any space that needs instant color. Then get everything you need to plant and protect them with low prices guaranteed on soil and mulch. Dig into spring garden deals for 4 days at the Home Depot. Now through May 10th. Exclusions apply. See homedepot.com/price match for details.
Ready to soundtrack your summer? With Red Bull Summer All Day Play, you choose a playlist that fits your summer vibe the best. Are you a festival fanatic, a deep end DJ, a road dog, or a trail mixer? Just add a song to your chosen playlist and put your summer on track. Red Bull Summer All Day Play. Red Bull gives you wings. Visit redbull.com/brightsummer ahead to learn more. See you this summer.
Experience a membership that backs what you're building with American Express Business Platinum. Unlock over $3,500 in business and travel value annually with statement credits on select purchases from brands like Dell, Hilton, and Adobe, and other benefits. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Based on total potential value of statement credits on select purchases and other benefits, enrollments required, monthly and other limits and terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
This is Sunny Hollywood Pooney from the Growing Up Rock podcast and Podcast Rock City, and you are listening to Jay Scott on The Hook Rocks, the ultimate rock community podcast. Do you know where you are? I certainly hope so. Time to get hooked.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to The Hook Rocks. I'm your host, Jay Scott, part of the Pantheon Podcast Network. I always mention before we begin each episode, great platform of music-related podcast. Something for everyone's music taste is on the platform. I always mention my friends on the Hangin' and Bangin' podcast, Vinny Appice and Carmen Apice, along with Ron Anesti, as well as Shout Out Loudcast, Martin Popoff, Mistress Carrie, and Baco on Cobras and Fire. So check out all those podcasts on the Pantheon Podcast Network. You can find that platform at pantheonpodcast.com. You can follow them on Twitter and on Facebook, Pantheon Pods. And you can also follow The Hook Rocks on Twitter and Facebook. Search us up at The Hook Rocks. You can follow us wherever you do podcasts, any platform, we are on it. Whether it's Amazon, Spotify, Apple, you can catch all our episodes. Don't forget to set your app to automatic download so you get all the latest and greatest Hook Rocks episodes. We've had some great episodes recently. We just had Emer Reynolds on, the director for the Phil Lynott documentary, Songs for While I'm Away. Great conversation with her about Phil Lynott and her approach to the movie and what she wanted to tell, the story she wanted to tell about Phil. We also have had some great new music spotlights with Seven Stones, Odd Even, and Travis McCready, the former singer of Bishop Gunn. We also tackled the subject on streaming services, proposing the lowest royalty rates in the history of music. So catch out that episode. I get a little fired up when I talk about that stuff because it's how much more can you take from these artists? It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Sliver of a penny.
A sliver. But our next guest, or my two next guests, are members of a band that I've been wanting to have on since the beginning of this year, ever since I heard their single Breathe come out. Fantastic video, fantastic song. What really to me separates this song from a lot of new bands that are out there is the arrangement is just absolutely kick-ass. It's so layered. It's so textured. It's a great band to watch out for in 2022 and beyond. I'd like to welcome in Stacey and Peter from Crashing Wayward. What's going on, guys?
What's up, Jay? Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, man, totally looking forward to this conversation for a while. Glad we're able to do it. And glad we're able to do it before the end of 2021, because I kind of want to include you in that conversation of great emerging bands that have come out since 2020 into this year. There's been so much great music, you guys included. So it's a pleasure to have you on the Hook Rocks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Well, we always start the same way. Every time we have first-time guests on the show, we always start with the same first question, and that is really what we're all about. Just like every great rock song has a hook that sucks you in, every rock fan has a moment, whether it's a song, an album, a band, or performance that hooked them on rock and roll. What was it for you guys?
Stacey, you want to start?
How to describe this band, or just
you in general, right?
Yeah. Whatever hooked you, whatever set your path on rock and roll.
I think, for me, it was, I came from a long line of piano players. So, I was fortunate to, much like Peter, to have an older sister who had, lots of friends. And my friends had older sisters and brothers who had great record collections. And I think it was probably the first time I heard Black Dog by Led Zeppelin. And I was just like, what is that? But I was also into, the Bee Gees and the Eagles and, anything music, Gordon Lightfoot, I remember that resonating with me as a 5-year-old. I'd walk around my house going, sundown, you better take care. So there was quite an eclectic mix of music for me as a kid. I was into everything from, Van Halen to Cheap Trick, but also really liked, David Bowie and the Bee Gees and, Styx and bands like that. And, when the early 80s hit, I was sucked into all that early 80s new wave movement of the Motels and, Psychedelic Furs and David Bowie. Of course, he always changed with every decade, but all those great bands, Billy Idol and Duran Duran. And there was an eclectic mix of music that resonated with me on all levels. So that's, kind of complicated.
Yeah, mine's a little more, cut and dry. I can go down the list of what influenced me, or to me from the get-go. My first memory was Queen, Another One Bites the Dust. And just hearing that for the first time was just like, wow. It was kind of like funny. I was young, but it was like a funny song. Like, wow, what are they saying? Another One Bites the Dust. And from that, it was Duran Duran, actually. A lot of the new wave and the funk and kind of like disco and just the anthemic swells of the music really hooked me. Then I kind of got into my brother listened to a lot of post-punk, early goth and alternative. And I remember one evening going to bed and he would just be playing his records and the Cult Electric came on. And that just kind of like, that was the big hook in rock for me. The Cult.
Music was so much more magical back then. I don't know why music is, there's a lot of good new bands, but just in general, like why is music suck so bad now?
Well, I had a conversation with Mike, our producer Mike, about that just the other day. And it's because back then we feel like, people made albums. Now it's just about the single.
Yeah, I think there's something to it. I think it's the lack of physical connection with music.
Yeah.
When I was younger, when you guys were younger, when we went to the record store to get an album, that was going to babysit us for like the next 2 weeks. We'd lock ourselves in our room. We'd have the liner notes. We'd look at the album art. We'd look at the back.
Yeah, it was an experience.
Yeah, it was an experience. Now it's point, click, download. It comes from thin air now. There's not an appreciation for it because you can't touch it, you can't feel it, you can't hold it.
Friday nights at Tara Records.
Yeah, I know. In Chicago, we had Rolling Stone Records, and we get our paychecks, on Friday. I worked at a grocery store, and then we'd all, jump in a car and we'd all go down and pick up hot dogs and go to the record store, and we'd sit in the parking lot and listen to the albums that we just got on the tape deck in the car, and we cruise up and down the streets. Everybody's listening to music. It was a moment that you look forward to. Now it just doesn't have that feel to it. Doesn't have that physical connection.
Yeah.
Stacey, you mentioned something too as well with piano. My musical journey, I've mentioned this on the show. My grandfather was a piano player back in the days of the speakeasies. He used to play for the Mobsters back in Chicago.
No kidding.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
And Sam Giancana, who replaced Al Capone, my grandfather was his favorite piano player. And I used to stay overnight there when I was a kid. And I remember as early as 4 years old, waking up on a Sunday morning to this booming piano in the basement. It had a baby grand. And he played it like it was thunder.
Oh, yeah.
Like he really hit those keys hard. And then I had an older brother who was 4 years older than me that brought the album Journey Escape into the house. And I was like 7 or 8. Of course, the first song is Don't Stop Believin'. I hear the piano, I make that connection, and then I was on my way.
Yeah, what a great album. Yeah. That album changed my life too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, Peter, you mentioned another one, Bites the Dust, which was, really big here in Chicago because it was played after Chicago Bulls games when Jordan was playing. And then you also, I never really had an appreciation for Duran Duran until I saw them live like 15 years ago. And I was blown away, absolutely blown away. Talk about sounding almost perfect live.
Right.
That's a cool moment you mentioned, Jay, that it's like the certain artists that have been around for years, and you may have been like, yeah, they're okay, or you appreciate, I listen to them. And then years and years and years go by and you see them, and it's just like, I remember I had that experience in '98. I saw Iggy Pop, and I was just blown away, man. This guy came out in no shirt, cut like a rug, in black vinyl pants, and just destroyed, 2,000 people. And I didn't take my eyes off it. And this band was all cool, and they had smokes in their mouth and like Les Paul. It was fucking amazing. It was one of the best concerts I've ever sounded. I was like, it reified how great that artist was. And all of a sudden I went down the Iggy Pop wormhole, I started buying all his little back catalog and the Stooges, and it was just like I got sucked in and exposed to that at an early age, but I didn't really become like ensconced in it.
Yeah, it is a great moment when you find an artist that has been around for so long, and it's like a new artist for you. It's like a new band, and you go down that rabbit hole of discovering their music. And I know we just talked about Thin Lizzy before we came on. Thin Lizzy was one of those bands for me. Like, I couldn't have cared about Thin Lizzy while I was growing up, growing up in the late 80s, early 90s. And then about 10 years ago, I only knew them, Jailbreak and Boys Are Back in Town. And I started listening to Johnny the Fox record, and just blew me away. And just the lyrics that Phil wrote, the poetry and the stories.
Great lyricist. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. I love when that happens. Or like even a song, like, you ever had that experience where you get an album and there's always that song or two in the beginning that you kind of skip over. And then like 5 or 6 years later, you're just playing it in the car and you hear that song. You're like, wait, this song is really fucking good. like, why have I not listened to this before?
Right.
So I love when that happens. It's like it's a whole newness and discovery that is the gift of music.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
That happens a lot for me when I'm watching a movie, a song I just totally hate, but if it's in the right moment, it's like, it just totally opens up a whole new perspective.
Or when you're in a club, when you're in a club and you're
right.
waiting for a band to come on and they're playing songs before they get on stage and it just hits you right at that moment. And you're like, this is a really badass song. And it just seals the deal for you. It's that experience. And I don't know, if younger people, the younger generation, get that yet. I think I think it is changing. I think it really is. I think if you look at what's happened as a result of the pandemic, I think a lot of younger people have that angst that rock and roll needs to survive. And I think that's been created as, the last year and a half.
Yeah, there was some young guys we met at our first show, which was just October 15th. And I saw these two guys standing together, and they were just fixated on us all night. And it was kind of amazing to see, because it was like, I could tell that they were experiencing something very cool of what we were, throwing out there. And, Pete and I would talk to them after the show. You remember those guys, Pete? And they were just so cool. And they were really by the show. And that's an amazing, I love that exchange when because we're all fans, whether we play music or we're looked at as rock stars or whatever, we're still fans, So that energy, whether it's from us or from a fan's perspective, it's still that exchange of that awesome music when it's really good.
Yeah, it's that synergy that's created, between the crowd and the band that, once it's in your blood, once you experience that. That's why I always tell my friends who have younger kids, I have a 16-year-old, but, a teenager, take them to a rock and roll show. They'll be changed forever. Changed forever. It's not science. It's just, it'll happen.
They come to go see Alice Cooper,
Yeah. Where did it go from there, guys? Where did your journey continue in terms of wanting to be on stage, wanting to be in a band after that initial moment that hooked you on rock and roll?
For me, it actually kind of came later in life. I've always kind of thought of myself as a performer, and I never really took myself seriously as a singer. And then, to be honest, I actually pretty much got started from liquid courage and karaoke. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start a band. It just kind of went from there. I just love performing. I've always loved performing rock because it's just like it's purely cathartic for me every time I'm on stage and I perform. So it's always been a desire just to get that out and be on the stage and perform the way I do with my band. And it's just a beautiful thing. So that pretty much was my start. It's nothing like going back. I started when I was 13 and liquid courage and karaoke. The rest is history.
What about you, Stacey?
I started piano when I was 9 and took heavy lessons to 11. And then my parents bought me this little acoustic guitar. And I just remember I picked it up and I, did the Pete Townsend thing. It never left my hands. So, by the time I was 14, my parents are going, oh, shit, what did we do? And I would just stand in front of the mirror and I would just, visualize and, unbeknownst to me, law of attraction, right? I would just visualize and I would stand there with my electric guitar and I would just visualize just lights and screaming fans. And it was everything that it sucked me in, watching Ozzy and Judas Priest and Van Halen. And it was like, that's what I'm going to do, and I was like, this is it. This is my destiny. So, I was blessed to have music in my life at a very young age. And, I had bands and I started playing clubs when I was like 18, and then I got my first break when I was 23. I grew up in Toronto. And I joined a band that was on Virgin Records in the States. And then was in that band for 8 years. And then in 2003, I joined LA Guns and was blessed to be in that band for 10 years and did many world tours and records. So I've, really worked my ass off to get where I am. Feel very blessed at the same time, but it was, what I visualized as a kid. And it's funny when it's like those dreams do come true, but you work your ass off to get where you're at, and you eat a lot of shit along the way, but I can't imagine doing anything else. I'm not really good at anything else. But
what about writing music? Writing music is a very important part of creating. Was there a song that you heard that inspired you to write a melody, write lyrics, continue on that path? Because, you can hear music, you can pick up the instruments and playing. And a lot of people in the beginning, they play what they know, they play what they hear, they play the songs of the bands they're listening to. And then there's that moment where the light bulb clicks where it's like, hey, that's a great song. I want to be able to connect and write a song like that or be in that type of bubble. Was there a moment for you guys?
I think, Pete and I have a lot of the same influences. So I think that's why we gel as writers, as well as Carl and Dave. I think Pete and I have sat and had drinks and talked about this. And I think it's, for me, it was taking melody from, like, say, David Bowie or Bee Gees, and being a piano player as a young kid. And then, but putting that to, like, the dirty, rawness ass kicking of, like, of early Aerosmith and Van Halen and Dio. And so you make for me as a writer, it was like always mixing those elements of, like, say a Prayer by Duran Duran meets, Judas Priest, you got another thing coming. So for me, it was always about melody and this emotion and this painting. And that's kind of how I established myself as a pretty good writer. It was taking all these different things and mixing them together, as opposed to writing in just one style or riffs and stuff like that. It was a canvas for me.
Yeah,
Pete,
I think it's
the same way.
Yeah, it's like kind of an evolution for myself. Kind of goes back to the Cult Electric album. I think that's kind of where I started when I started writing. That was a main big inspiration for me. And I think, like what Stacey was just speaking of, it's been kind of a work in progress, and it just evolved into what it is now, just kind of hitting all the, where we're at right now. It's just, I'm writing the most genuine, and I hate to use the word authentic, but it's the most authentic music I've ever written, lyrically, melody. It's the most. In the past, I always felt like I had to be somebody else. It's like, I need to be Ian Ansbury or Josh Todd, because it was the, when Buck Cherry first came out, that was the thing. Now, it's taken me some time, but I have my voice, and I am me for the first time.
I think really, you channel also too, Jay. It's like, and we've talked about this too, because you channel who your idols are. For me, it's like I wanted to be, Joe Perry, and Randy Rhoads, and all the Steve Stevens and all Johnny Thunders. And I think with Pete too, it's like he channels his David Bowie, his influences of Scott Weiland and Ian Astbury, but Pete's also into Michael Jackson, and so I think you take all these things and you make it, you just kind of all tie them up in this knot, and then you just release it, and you become you. But Pete's he's got a fantastic sense of melody. And again, that comes down to influences, as I do with my guitar lines and stuff, are very eclectic, kind of airy, haunting. And that's, I get that growing up listening to Rush. For example, Alex Lifeson was a big influence on me. But then I take those, like I said, melodies of like say the Motels or Duran Duran, and then mix it with a little, Aerosmith or Guns N' Roses or any of those great classic bands, and then you get this kind of very interesting. That's why when you hear Breathe, wow, this sounds really different, because it is different. And if you'd have heard the demo that Carl I wrote 10 years ago, it's night and day from, what we recorded, but the idea was there. So, when we all heard that, it was like, this is freaking cool. Yeah. This is going to be something special. And then Mike came in, changed the key, dropped it down to a drop D and changed the key. And then it just went from there. And Mike Gillies, our producer, who's, was Metallica's studio engineer for 26 years. Fantastic producer, 6th member of the band, as far as I'm concerned. He just went to town, and that's what you hear. But it's different than anything I've ever recorded, and I think it's different than anything you've done before. And
I think
it's exciting.
Yeah, with this band, it's actually one of the first bands we never sat down and said, all right, guys, this is what we're going to do. And this is how we're going to sound. This is how we're going to look. The only thing that we said is we want to do something different.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do rehash anything that we've done in the past. We don't want to look like it. We don't want to sound like it. And that's kind of like where it is right now. And everybody contributes. To the songs.
What's cool too, Jay, is like when you hear our music, it's like there's a little bit of everything. You can hear a little Stone Temple Pilots, you can hear a little bit of Soundgarden, you can hear the Cult, you can hear some Foo Fighters and Guns N' Roses. So it's just all this great elements of great rock mixed up into a classic new kind of modern vibe. I don't think we sound really like anybody.
No, you don't. I agree. And that's one thing that really caught my ear was the texture, the layers that you guys have. I mean, there's not one definitive influence that you can say, oh, if you like this band, you'll like these guys. I mean, it's basically a stew of stuff that you guys kind of all merge together. I mean, I think of the conversations I have with my son, who's a young guitar player, and he was asking me, about, listening to stuff. And I said, at your age, you should focus on listening to everything.
Oh yeah.
Because if you're only listening to one style, you're going to sound like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You listen to the blues, listen to jazz, listen to pop rock, listen to country, listen to everything and pick things that you like from each artist. And that's how you'll find your own sound.
Right.
And then the next day, I see my John Lee Hooker and my Muddy Waters albums in his room.
Nice.
So that was really
awesome.
Good. Yeah. As far as
that's the hope for rock,
Yeah, I mean that's I think, and I did it too when I was growing up. I grew up during the 80s, and that's all I listened to. Everything else was shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to listen to a lot of singer-songwriters, listen to a lot of different stuff, like Butch Walker or Pete Yorn, artists like that. I like that old swampy country stuff too as well, which is really kind of blues-based.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. But yeah, it's really important. I think too, one of the things that I see, especially with newer bands, they're all good. I never bash anyone. They all have their place. But I think a lot of people focus on, oh, they sound like this band. Oh, they sound like that band. And I guess it might be hard to do because, you're a young kid and you're listening to this type of music and, you don't maybe understand the legacy and the footprint, I should say, probably the footprint of influence those bands leave. And to kind of fall under their shell and fall under that bubble, it's a pretty wild place to be if you're going to go that route, because you're going to be compared to those bands. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but I do like the bands that kind of forge their own path and give me something new.
Going back to our influences, we're all influenced by, we all know the Stones were influenced by Muddy Waters and blues and such.
Yeah.
I was actually just listening to Funkadelic the other day and was like, oh my gosh, this is Prince. It was like everything about it was Prince. Yeah. But, Prince went on and made it his own thing. And, I'm really hopeful for the youth. I see a lot of youth playing instruments again and guitars and getting into rock. And even the first band the band that opened with us, our first show, Slaves to Humanity. I mean, these are kids and they're out there rocking, and so that's kind of like where we want to jump on and play with a lot of alike bands with us that are doing things that are different, especially in the youth, and the younger bands as well, so I just tap into
so
that.
Cool when we were backstage at the show and, we were listening to the opening band and they went into this version of Baba O'Reilly. And it was like, what? Wow. I mean, these kids were like 16, 17 years old and they did this cool version of that without keyboards. And they were, great band. We're going to do more shows with them actually. Fantastic young band.
Yeah.
As far as Crashing Wayward's history goes, how did this all begin for you guys?
Well, it's kind of an interesting backstory. Do you want to tell it, Peter, or do you want me to?
So I hadn't been doing anything musically for about 10 years because I was kind of at a point where just nothing was gelling. And so I kind of just more or less gave up. But I had a close friend who started off as, one of my biggest mega fans from my previous band. And he just never gave up on me. He was like, I'll put you in the studio. You can record your own stuff. So we did a couple songs, but he would always send me, links of bands that were auditioning or looking for a singer. And I would just shoot them down every time. Nope, not what I'm looking for. And one day out of the blue, he sent me a link to Stacey's Facebook and says, Electric Radio Kings is looking for a new singer. Their singer just quit. I just messaged Stacey. I saw this, in the text message, his little profile photo. And I'm like, and I saw Stacey David Blades. And I'm like, I know that guy. So long story short, Stacey, I guess you're more or less intrigued to what Steve was telling you or sending you?
Backstory, Pete and I actually knew each other in the early 2000s, and he would come up. The same friend, we hung out, we got to know each other, but then we lost contact with each other. So anyways, from 2017 to 2019, I had this band, Electric Radio Kings, and we got signed to a company called MI5, which was part of Universal, and we had done a couple singles with big radio campaigns that did very well. So we actually remade a version of Amy Winehouse's Back to Black, which actually charted number 28 on Billboard mainstream rock charts. We were like, holy shit, it's all happening. And it was a huge management deal in the works. And we started playing some great shows. And the singer, he just knew that, I could see this unfolding. He was on the fence and he wanted to do it, but he didn't. And he knew that he couldn't carry. And the night our album came out on Universal, we played in Houston in front of a huge crowd. And we got back to the hotel and he's like, check your emails. I quit the band. See ya. And we locked the record stiff. It didn't do anything. The management deal fell through, and that was it. I was just, the band imploded, and I was going to quit music because it was like all this building success, and we were getting tons of national radio airplay, and I'm like, what just happened? But it happened for a reason. And so Peter's friend Steve messaged me, and I was so checked out at that point. I was just like, I just didn't care, but it was like, I got to keep the band going and continue this, I don't want to say legacy, because it was no legacy, but I got to hold on to this life raft, you know? So he's like, "Do you check out Pete?" I'm like, yeah. And he goes, "Go back on his page." So I went back on his page, and Pete had redone a version of Rihanna's Stay. And I was just blown away. And I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was like, holy fuck, this guy's amazing. So I messaged Steve back, and I said, yeah, this guy's great. He goes, well, you know him, Stacey. I go, I don't. He goes, yeah, that's Pete from Whiskey Star and Daredevil Jane. It was like a brick, bang. I'm like, holy shit. And it all just... So I'm like, oh my God, like, yeah, you know, have him call me. So I'm like, what's up, dude? And, you know, we caught up, and this is the, you know, what sold me was like, Pete was like, I'm your guy, man. Don't fuck around. Don't fuck around with anybody else. I'm your guy. And I'm like, damn right you are.
You know why I said that is because I was so tired of getting runarounds from other bands. And I'm just like, this is it. This is it for me. I'm going to do this. I know Stacey. You know, I dig Stacey, and this is it. So that's why I said what I said. So
all the other guys just kind of started coming in with Carl and Dave. Dave was already filling in for Keith Horn, who was the guitar player in Electric Radio. So Dave was like, you know, I'm like, do you want to do this new thing with me? You know, but we were calling it ERK still. So we played a couple shows right before the pandemic, and then, you know, shit hit the fan. And then the drummer was like, I'm not leaving my house for a year or so. And, you know, we were having problems with him, and great drummer and everything, but it just wasn't working out. So we got Sean. And then it just really started taking a life of its own. And then that's when, you know, Pete said, he's like, Stace, this isn't Electric Radio Kings. He's like, you're the only guy from that band. Because we got, this is a whole new different thing. It sounds nothing like that other band. I was like, you're right. So he was like, you got to change the name. And I had to legally do it because I had an LLC with the singer. So we're like, oh, okay, what are we going to call the name of the band? So
that's the worst. That's the worst.
Because you got 5 guys trying to name a band. It's chaos. So Pete and I started throwing a few names around, and all of a sudden, just third day, I'm like, Pete, what do you think of Crashing Wayward? He goes, that's the name. That's it. That's the name of the band. He goes, don't dictate, you know, any other name. He goes, that's it. And he goes, you tell everybody that's the name of the band, and it's not open for discussion.
Yeah. In hindsight, we should have gotten everybody involved.
I told him everything was going on, and I had to legally dissolve this name. And like, what? I said, okay, the name of the new band is Crashing Wayward. It's like, they were like, is this up for discussion? I'm like, nope. Everyone's like, okay. No. So I had to be a little bit of a ball breaker on that. But, you know, it was like, you know, Pete was saying, it's like, if this will be drawn out for months. And, you know, we made the announcement, and the response was off the hook. And I was like, damn it, buddy, you were right. It was really, really overwhelming, the response. So that's when I knew we made the right decision.
You know,
I'm sorry. I was just going to say it really opened up the door for us to write the music that we had gone on to write. So I think it was the best move that we could have made. But
you know, you also have the element of the pandemic, and Pete, you mentioned something that, you know, you feel like you've connected with yourself lyrically and writing music. Do you feel like this pause in things really helped that come along and really helped that process with you of like kind of finding yourself musically? And I think you used the word more authentic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think just, especially just the year, of 2020 and just, that entire year and just more or less being quarantined at home, really, self-reflection and, meaning of life. And it just so much going on, socially, politically, alienation from neighbors and, who to trust, just everything has just like really opened up the floodgate for me lyrically. And it's allowed me to write stuff, content that is, I feel brave singing what I'm singing about. And most of these songs, all these songs have a meaning. It's not going out and hanging with the boys and getting drunk, and nothing against any of that. That's all great. And we need to have fun, songs like that. But I wanted to have depth and meaning to everything and have something that is fun, not everything just down and out and, woe is me, but have things that kind of uplift people and make people think. And that's really what the last 2 years have given me. I feel blessed in that way. It's just kind of, really opened up.
Everything with this band has really kind of been a gift. Just the songwriting is, we've got 4 very strong songwriters, and Sean does this thing on there, and just kind of is so open-minded too. Because some drummers are just like, I'm playing what I want to play, and Sean's just like, what do you want to do? And then, sometimes we just do your thing, or sometimes we'll have an idea and he takes it and he makes it great. So this synergy between the 5 of us is just freaking, you can't touch it, man. It's just incredible. And I've been in some great bands and there's something to be said about the chemistry between the 5 of us. Is very, very compatible.
Did you find that the pause with COVID helped the band? I mean, it is dangerous for a new band to not have any gigs and and it's hard to keep a band together, when you're dealing with all that. But at the same time, having yourselves find yourselves as a band, musically, lyrically, the direction you want to go. Sometimes a pause isn't the worst thing.
No, it helped us because we spent once everything kind of opened up, like last August of 2020, because the studios were even closed here, so we couldn't work at all. So we just demoed, and then Mike started doing pre-production, and so once we got in and started recording, we just spent so much time refining all these songs, and then just a more batch of songs came, and it was just like, it kept us busy. So we were bummed we couldn't play, but this wave of creativity was just unstoppable for us. So we got what we needed to get done, and we shot the video in November of 20. And so come February, boom, we had this great new single and a great new video, and we had 2 other songs at that time that were already pretty much finished. And then we were like, okay, we need to do the rest of an album. So we went in May or June through just last weekend. We're still recording, but all of a sudden, all these songs we wrote, Mike's just the production. And it's like, holy crap, this is when the producer says this is magical, from a guy who worked with Metallica for 25 years, it says this is magical. It's like, I think we got something cool.
You might be onto something.
Yeah. We might be on, and I'm not one guy to toot my own horn, but this band's, it's freaking amazing. I'm proud to say that. Yeah.
So we just had our first show, and it feels good to get that one, dust off, the cobwebs and get that one going. And now just kind of like, get that, fine tune our craft and get on stage and just play these songs and just gel. Cause I think that I feel very blessed that we've had the time to develop these songs and write these albums, or it's going to be a couple of EPs is what we're deciding to release. Mm-hmm. So we have a couple of EPs worth, but it's given us time for that. But it did take away from us getting together and rehearsing and playing, together. I feel that was the biggest negative and loss for us. But we're getting back into it now that things are, in full swing, and I'm excited for that. I'm excited to just gelling with these guys on stage, knowing where they move, and just kind of, matrixing around them, just feeling it. So,
as far as what's next, when can we expect a full length album from Crashing Wayward?
I think February, March we'll release the first EP, and we're going to ready the new single, which is called Stranger Days, which is a phenomenal song. And we're going to do something very different visually for that, video-wise. So that'll launch the first EP, and we're booking more shows, and we're going to start venturing out east and try to conquer the world. There's a world left to conquer.
Chicago. You mentioned East? I'm in Chicago, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah, we love to go. Yeah, we'd love to come out to Chicago and play for you.
As far as the music goes, 2021 was it overwhelming, or had an overwhelming amount of great music. It seemed like everybody was swinging, from the fences from, early on this year all the way through the month of November into December. And a lot of bands have to keep in front of their fan base nowadays because the attention span is so short, because what is looked upon as great on a Friday, by next Wednesday, they're on to something else. So you have to really keep in front of an artist. And you mentioned the first EP coming out. And I've heard a lot of bands that I've talked to taking an approach of doing an EP at the beginning of the year, and doing another EP at the end of the year, so they can keep having material out in front of the fans. Is that right? The idea for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Sean too. Malin, and then these guys are going. Well, that just blows the whole wad right out of it. Everything is so quick now these days, and so it's why spend that format and just blow it all out of something that we've been working on for 2 years. So let's kind of breadcrumb,
Yeah. So when it's all said and done, we have 13 songs, we want to release the 2 EPs and then combine them afterwards and put it out as an album. But it's just like what you're saying. We got to keep it going. Otherwise, and I feel it every day, the FOMO, what's happening next? Are we too late? But we just got to be patient and ride this out. We got a good thing going. I think it's relevant. So I think we're writing something that could last quite a while, so that's relatable. So.
Yeah, I think 2022 is going to be just as strong as 2021, just from the bands that I know that have been hanging on to an album and waiting till next year, because they were like, man, there's so much new music coming out. Let's wait, because, all the great music, you don't want to get ignored. You don't want to get forgotten about, because, man, there's some heavy hitting going on with music right now. I mean, just, it seems like every Friday, my bank account becomes less and less because of all the music I'm buying, and damn it, these pre-ordered vinyls that
Yeah.
it's like every time I go on a site and I get the pre-order vinyl, I'm like, this is going to drive me into bankruptcy with all these vinyls that I'm buying. So it's just crazy. But no, it's an exciting time to be a band and an exciting time to be a fan too as well, because before the pandemic, we were talking about rock and roll being irrelevant, taking a backseat to other genres. People even said rock and roll is dead. I think for 100% certainty, you can't say that anymore. I think the words now are resurgence. The words now are what's next. The words now are connecting to the youth, connecting to younger people.
Yeah, it's like people say rock is dead. It's like, Pete and I went and saw Guns N' Roses, 40,000 people live in Legion Stadium. It's like, I don't think rock is dead.
Right.
So,
well, right. And rock is dead.
Band, but there's
rock is dead on top 40 radio, but all the bands,
it always was.
It's all rock bands.
Yeah.
You're right. Well, yeah. Okay. Except for when Warren
maybe
Whitesnake
in the 80s
ruled,
it wasn't, but
Yeah, but that was a product of MTV though. That's when radio started to follow what MTV was doing. MTV was breaking all these bands, and then radio, had to follow because they were going to get crushed, and they had to start playing these bands. But I never understood the fixation with rock fans about being accepted by mainstream. I've never understood that. Rock and roll really isn't supposed to be mainstream. It's supposed to have that fuck you attitude. It's supposed to be, it's supposed to be like that. And, it's okay if the Grammys fuck it up every year. It's okay if the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame fuck, because that just adds to our cause, right? That just puts another brick on our cause that's saying, hey, this is really the music that we love and we listen to, and we don't care what critics say. I always get nervous when I hear people quote critics about rock music. And, the music I grew up and loved was never accepted by critics. Whether it was Maiden, whether it was Dokken, whether it was whoever, those were never, darlings of the critics or anything like that. And I see a lot of similarities. Iron
Maiden, they sell out every place they play us. It's like, oh, whoa, critics, darlings. It's like, who cares?
Yeah. And I also, I mention this a lot on my podcast, my connection with my son who listens to a lot of the new bands. He said something very important, I think, too, as well, that a lot of young kids went into the pandemic listening to pop, listening to rap. And when you're sitting at home every day, e-learning, and you're not doing anything new, and you're struggling with finding something to be interesting, that's when these young kids start turning to rock, right? Because they're pissed off. They're not hanging out with their friends. They're not, being social like they want to. So, he said a lot of young kids found themselves during the pandemic. They turned off the pop music because it's the same thing. They wanted something different. They turned up the rock music.
Yeah.
And now when I go to shows, whether, I go see the Struts or I go see Rival Sons or I go see other bands, there's a lot of young people that I never saw before, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you guys feel that too as well?
Phenomenal. Pete and I saw this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pete and I and my dearly departed ex-wife passed away last week. We, three of us, that's why I'm wearing sunglasses. My eyes I look like a heroin addict because I'm just crying and crying. But we went and saw the Struts for my anniversary right before the pandemic, and Pete and I were blown away at the connection of that audience from 15 years old to 60. I've never seen an audience, Jay, you saw them play, and just everybody singing every word. It was like one unity. I've never seen that at a show before, and I was just like, it really influenced us, because we were looking at each other going, well, shit, we got to top this.
Yeah, it was inspiring and also made me feel like I suck. So
it's interesting you say that because I took my son to see the Struts and Nick Perry a couple months ago, And we go to all these shows. I take him with me to all these shows I go to, and we're walking out and I go, "What'd you think?" He goes, "That was incredible." I go, "That's how it's done. That's how a lead singer holds a crowd in the palm of their hand and gets them to do whatever he wants them to do." Yeah. And I said, that's magic right there. That's really something special.
Yeah.
Right.
Pete had that moment too, because it was our first show that, I hadn't played in 17 months. Pete hadn't played in 17 months. The other guys have played. So it was very special for Pete and I. And he was very quiet all week, and I was kind of getting worried. It was just like, he was like Ross on Friends when he was like living with Joey and
hi.
He's like,
yeah,
and I was like, and then he just came out of the gate, man, and Pete looked so fucking rad, and he was just on fire, and I saw something very special in him that night, and I'm like, this is what, from the first conversation I had with him, and because I'd seen him play, this kid's a superstar. He's going to be the next Bowie, the next Scott Weiland, and it was like watching, Nick Strutz, it was that same kind of energy. And I'm just so excited for us to get in front of really a lot of people and, let loose and let the magic pour out of us. 'Cause I feel that this whole band's been just an absolute gift from God.
When we think about years past, decades past of the scene that occurred in LA and the scene that was in Seattle, the scene is really global now. And you're able as a band to reach fans that normally, years ago, you wouldn't be able to reach. You couldn't get their music, or it wasn't as accessible as it is now. And that's something that, is really different and a positive, especially for new bands that can release a single, release an EP, and people in Spain, people in South America, people all over can hear your music and make that connection and build your fan base that way. Have you seen a lot of interest from outside the U.S., outside of Canada?
We got played on this Australian podcast, and I remember the guy's reaction after he played. Oh, he played Disco Kills. Was that it, Pete? Yeah, our second single, Disco Kills. Which
yeah,
great song.
Fantastic song too. He's like, that I tell you what, it was something like that. So to hear that, I'm like, wow, we just got played in Australia, and the guy's reaction with the accent was like, that felt pretty good. That felt pretty good, And that was one of the first songs Dave brought into the band, or the guitar player, Dave Harris, and it was like Sabbathy, Soundgarden, and that was the song I played to Sean, our drummer, when I asked him if he was interested in the band, and he heard that, he was like, fuck yeah. So we've had some press in South America and stuff too. But, the band still at Jay is fairly new, so we're still getting moved out. But, we got Disco Kills as well. To mention, we won UK's Classic Rock Magazine Track of the Week.
That's awesome, yeah.
It was a stiff competition.
Yeah,
we won, but we won. We won. So we were like, vote. Come on, all of our fans, vote. So, man, we just skated by. But that was pretty prestigious for us to win that. We did win some international film awards in like India or Breathe.
We look forward to going to India. So.
Looks the nice little piece of paper we won got chosen. So
I always
a little bit.
I always get amazed when I look at the analytics of the podcast and I see Pakistan on there. I'm like, who the hell is listening to me in Pakistan? Who the hell is listening to me babble?
technology, hate it or love it. It does, go to realms of above and beyond. So,
yeah.
Because normally it's like, if it was 1988, it's like, there's nobody in Pakistan that's able to get your music for an unsigned signed band.
Right. Right. But it even was that way too, where like if you were a band in New York and you were a local band, me being in Chicago, more likely I would never hear that band.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah. And I think the reach is so awesome now that
that's a definite plus for sure, Jay.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I've talked to bands who have gotten in contact with booking agents in Belgium and Spain, and rock bands are treated like royalty over there. There's still that mystique about rock and roll where I think in America it still isn't at that level that it used to be. So it's been a great conversation, guys. I do appreciate you coming on.
Jay. Yeah, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll have a new single and video out soon in the next couple of months. And our EP is coming, amazing material. And be sure to join our website, www.crashingwayward.com, and follow us on Instagram. We're going to start touring next year and come to a town near you.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, it's been great. It's been a pleasure talking with you guys. Everyone, that's Stacey, that's Pete from the band Crashing Wayward. Check them out on all the socials, as Stacey just mentioned. I'm Jay Scott. This is The Hook Rocks, the ultimate rock community podcast. Stay strong, stay safe, take care of each other. We'll chat soon.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having us.
You can't reason with the sun. Trust us, we've tried. This summer, it's time to put that angry ball of fire on mute. Columbia's Omni-Shade technology is engineered to protect you from the sun's harsh rays that can burn and damage your skin. The sun is relentless, but so is our gear. Level up your summer at Columbia.com to spend more time outside and less time slathering on aloe lotion. You're welcome. Columbia, engineered for whatever.
There's a new way to sweet green. Meet Wraps. Handheld, hearty, and made for life on the move. With bold, chef-crafted flavors, fresh ingredients, and over 40 grams of protein, they're built to satisfy without slowing you down. Try Wraps today in the app or at order.sweetgreen.com. Available at all participating locations.